Welcome to Unscripted Authentic Leadership Podcast. We're here for another week and another episode. We are excited. I am your host, Lafayette Lane, joined by co-host John LeBron. We definitely want to say thank you to all our listeners, all of our supporters who have been tuning in. This is our fourth week, and it is going well. We are excited about what's going on the podcast and the support. Thank you for all those that are supporting, whether it be via YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, streaming on all our platforms of Apple, Spotify, Buzzsprout, pretty much any streaming platform that you can find podcasts on, you can find us there. And we have definitely seen you all support. We just want to acknowledge all of your support and thank you for that. John, how you doing, man?
Man, I am so good. Just doing fantastic. Been a crazy day. Loving it. And again, ditto what Lafayette said, man. Thanks so much for all of you who've been supporting and putting comments on the posts and just sharing the love. And I can't tell you how much we appreciate it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And then, of course, you'll see right there on the bottom of the screen, a little ticker there. You can subscribe to our YouTube channel, give us a thumbs up, share the videos, and tell people about it. It's a guarantee that you'll find something that will encourage you and uplift you in your life. Well, let's get right into the conversation. Man, this week we're going to be talking about leading change. What a pertinent topic, what a relevant topic to be discussing in the climate and the context of our world right now. We need change to be led. We need leading change. And so we just want to talk about that. I just want to establish a ground foundational definition of what change is. Just from a simplistic standpoint, change is to make different, to give a different position, to give a different course or direction, to make a shift from one to another, to become different, or to undergo transformation. And when I thought about change, I thought about the butterfly, that transformation that the butterfly makes, the caterpillar makes from metamorphosis, how it goes from being a caterpillar to a butterfly through the process of going through the cocoon, that it is an uncomfortable process. But by the end of that process of metamorphosis, the caterpillar has to break out in order to fly. And so we want to talk about that whole perspective of leading change. There was a interesting quote I found, bro, from Peter Senge that says the simplest definition of leadership is the ability to produce change. And so if you want to summarize leadership, it is just simply someone, some man, some woman, or a group of people that has the ability to produce change. When you think about change in your mindset, just establishing that ground foundational definition of change, what do you think about?
100%. So, change is not, without getting into yet all of the intricacies of things and how to implement change and so forth. It is just not easy on any level. Personal levels, organizationally, culturally, it is not easy. And I mean, someone who can implement change effectively has to be able to share a vision, has to get buy-in, all these things that really go into the ability to effectively help an organization change, because we all fight it, right? Change is a fear, or it's a pain. Your brain actually registers pain with change. And so and most people don't like to come out of the comfort zone, right? And so that is it's definitely a struggle. So Frederick Douglass said, if there is no struggle, then there is no progress, right? So change, to me, people don't like it because it's hard. But if you're not progressing, or if you're not struggling through that, that means you've never been progressing. So
Absolutely. That was so good about the point that pain comes with change. Anytime you've seen any type of a shift in our history of our world, whenever there's been a seismic change, there's been some pain associated with it. There's been some losses that's been associated with it, because the reality is that everyone won't be able to adapt to the change. And so in order to have change to go forth effectively, you have to have people in place, leaders in place that have the ability to lead that change. And so when I thought about leading the change, I think that in order to be a leader that effectively leads change, as a leader, it requires us first to model the change that we desire to see. That before we can ask our organization, our group of people that we are leading, whether whatever context you are leading in, whether that be in a business context, in a church context, whether you are a pastor or you are a basketball coach, you are a teacher, you're a parent, you are in the position of a manager at your job, whatever level that you lead on, that you're trying to implement change in, I thought about that you have to model that change. And so you cannot ask your group or of people or your organization to model the change that they are first not seeing, because people will follow what they see over what they hear. And so you can tell people all day long that we're going to change the culture here. We're going to start implementing some different resources, some different technologies, some different avenues of how we navigate day to day and run the organization from the inside out. But if they don't see that change in the leader modeling in that, then they will not easily follow, and it will be a struggle trying to lead and navigate that change. Kind of talk about how the leader has to model that change in order to lead the change.
Well, I mean, leadership is spelled EXAMPLE, right? You got to be the example.
Yeah,
I mean, I know there's a guy out there saying that's not how you spell it. You get what I mean, right? It starts with you. If you want somebody to follow you, you want to be a leader, you have to set the example. Nobody likes a hypocrite.
Yeah.
I don't know how else to really say that, except for it just starts with you. You have to be the one that makes that decision to establish change. Change is literally a decision. There's nothing else to it. It's a decision backed by commitment. That's it. Those two things, and then you can have change. So it starts with a decision. You make the commitment. Then you can share your vision with your team, your organization, unless it's just a personal change, and get their buy-in on that. And then, but it starts with you. I don't know how else to put that.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And I love how you set the example. So that leader models that example of patience, that model of resilience and fortitude in order to solidify the change permanently. Because oftentimes what happens is that we can force a change. And if you force change, sometimes that change may happen, but it won't be permanent. It'll be temporary, because that change wasn't modeled, and you didn't have the patience as a leader to stick in there and for the people to grasp the change that you were trying to create in your culture. And so the leader must create these experiences, these modeling experiences that reveal new possibilities and imagination that harnesses the resources to win in every area. So that's what leading change is. And so in leading change, the leader must have vision. And having that vision as the leader, you recognize the areas of change that needs to be made. And so how do you recognize when it's time to make a change or to make changes? I want to hear your perspective on that. I've got some things written down on what I think about recognizing change, but just start us off there, John, on how do you know, or how do you recognize when it's time to make a change?
And it can vary a little bit. Understanding when to make changes can vary a little bit, whether it's a personal change, company change, so forth. We'll talk about culture changes, especially coming up here next month.
Yeah.
But on a base level, right? When your path no longer lines up with your purpose, then you know it's time for a change,
Yeah.
right? Sometimes you get so wrapped up in the process of what you're doing, and then you look back and you're like, wait a minute, where are we going, right? I think you also know when that happens when you start losing your drive to move forward. The
Yeah.
purpose is what gives you the drive, right? It's not the work.
That's good.
Um, so when you no longer have that drive, then you probably know something's off, and it's probably time for a change. When you're no longer moving forward, or even a company or organization is no longer moving forward, you're not hitting goals, you're not hitting personal goals, you're not hitting company goals,
Yeah.
then you know it's time for a change. If you're not progressing, right, as a person, as a society, as a company, any of those things, as a country, when you're not progressing towards good, then you know it's time for a change. And personally, if you realize that you have not stepped out of your comfort zone in a long time and you're just stuck in that sort of lull, it's time for a change. You have to get comfortable being uncomfortable.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Your purpose should drive that change. It should be
Mm-hmm.
the fuel. That was so good. And you talked about all levels of the context there, on the social, on the personal, on the business, on the spiritual, wherever context you can apply change to in all areas of your life. Because before it starts with the leader, it starts with yourself. So I'm glad you said that, even on a personal level as individuals, because we are all leaders on some level. There are changes that we have to constantly make, whether we want to or not. Whether you Life has a way of putting you in a position where it forces you to recognize when it's time to make a change. Your body tells you it's time to make a change. From the time that we are born to the time we die, we are constantly making changes. We are born a baby, but we don't stay a baby. We continue to develop, and so life is all about changes. And I literally had some of those same things that you mentioned in there. And when it's time to make a change, I thought about one of the telltale signs, the clear indicators of when it's time to make a change, is that when your relevance no longer exists. That if what you're doing is no longer relevant to your purpose, to what you're doing or what you're trying to accomplish, or where the context of the community or the people you are serving, if it is no longer relevant, it is time to change.
Mm-hmm.
We no longer use typewriters because typewriters are no longer relevant. We use keyboards. We don't use the rotary phones. We have cell phones. Why? Because it's no longer relevant. If we were still trying to do that, it would not fit the time, and it would not fit the purpose of the people that we are trying to serve in this time. So we have to make the change. If your style, if your approach is outdated, then you have to make a change. When what you're doing no longer works, that's another indicator. It's time to make a change. And then I also thought about when there is a lack of clear direction and vision in what you're doing, then it's time to make a change. If you no longer know the path that you want to go on, and you don't know from 3 to 5 years from now, this is where I want to be in my business. This is where I want to be in my health. This is where I want to be in my marriage. This is where I want to be in my education. Then it's time to make a change. It's time to make a clear indicator. And change is not always a negative thing. Change keeps you to where you can be successful. Without change, there can be no success. You have to change. It's a part of life. I don't think that anybody that's ever been successful would say that they were unwilling to change or they never had to make any changes. And so we talked about leading change. We talked about the foundation of change and why that's important. But how do you implement change? How can the leader, or how can someone effectively implement changes, whether that be personal changes, organizational changes, cultural changes, or societal changes? As a leader, how do you make those changes that can be implemented so they can successfully work?
So I kind of mentioned it before.
Yeah.
All change starts with a decision backed by commitment, right?
Sure.
It has to start with okay, we've got to do something different. Then you have to ensure that your purpose is and vision is well defined, right? And it has to line up with that. And one of the biggest mistakes people do make is they start too big, right? Like
Mm.
I'm gonna lose weight, and so I'm gonna lose 30 pounds this month. Okay, that's fine. There's an old saying that says, what's the best way to eat an elephant? It's one bite at a time.
One at a
Because
time.
it's impossible to do it,
Yeah.
in one big gulp. And so, I mean, you have to start small. Small successes will add up, right? There's a book called
Yes.
The Slight Edge, I believe it was. And it basically talks about how adding all the compound effect, pardon, the compound effect, talk about good small decisions add up to big great things.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And so the thing with change though is change creates uncertainty, right? And
Yes.
so especially in an organization and well, in any realm, but it's easier to control it when it's personal, just an individual change. But when you're talking about changing something other than yourself, company, society changes, so forth, it creates uncertainty, and uncertainty reduces productivity. So,
Mm.
so you must be sure to communicate and provide clarity to those who are going to be affected by the change or who are part of the change, right?
Yeah.
So the clarity will reduce uncertainty and minimize that sort of loss of production. And then you have to remind the organization of the mission, purpose, vision. You have to cast that vision.
Yeah.
And then within that, the clarity of when you're carefully explaining your change and your vision, you have to provide a clear path to make sure to the organization so they know that they're on track and they know their part in the change, right?
Yes.
And then when you include them as part of that and they have a clear understanding of their piece within the change, then they'll be a lot more excited to buy into that.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Totally agree with that. I love how you started off basically talking about making realistic goals of change, not making it so broad. You brought up the example of I want to lose weight, but how about I set a goal that I'm going to start off losing 5 pounds a month instead of 30? And so to implement that change, I can make realistic goals that I'm going to start little victories at a time. There's a quote that I use personally that progress should keep you motivated. And so if you make those realistic goals, you can celebrate the small victories, and those small victories will continue to encourage you to lead you on so that change will be permanent and it'll be effective, whether that's personally in your life, personal goals, or societal goals, or cultural goals, or societal changes, or cultural changes. We can see those things last more effectively if we take, like you said, that one bite of the elephant at a time. And then another thing that will help with that is track your progress. Track your progress. Don't get so you have a goal that you're so ambitious. That's the word I was looking for. You're so ambitious that you have a goal of having $100,000 saved up, but you've got 10,000 saved up and you're not satisfied. You don't know how to celebrate along the way. That each step that I take, that is changes. Change does not happen drastically. It happens one step at a time. And as I was researching this, John, about implementing change, there's some effective ways that you can create a system for yourself in order to implement change. This system that you can use is called change management systems. Change management systems. And you can break this change management system down into 3 phases. Phase number 1, preparation. Phase number 2, management. And phase number 3, reinforcement. And so you prepare yourself for the change. If my goal is to lose weight for the week, I'm going to prepare by making meal prep. I'm going to create all my meals at the beginning of the week. And so when I get to Monday and Tuesday and it's lunchtime, I have my lunch packed. So I won't go to McDonald's and get a Big Mac. If I have the preparation, the goal is to save money, then I know that I'll have to make some sacrifices. I won't go shopping every week. I've got a whole plan set ahead for the month of September that my goal, my budget is only $300. And so I have prepared that change because I have prepared myself for success. If you prepare to fail, you've already failed. And so a part of making that implementation of change is preparation. Now, the second phase is management. How do I manage that? How do I manage the weight loss? How do I manage my organization as a leader? How do I manage the youth group as a youth pastor? I can create groups. I can create social media platforms where we all can stay connected. We can stay engaged. And so I can manage and I can track my change in order to be successful in that. And last but not least, I create a system of reinforcement. And so I don't create a goal and just forget about it. I keep that goal in front of me. I put that note on the refrigerator. I put that reminder on my phone. I text my friend and say, hold me accountable. Make sure text me once a week or create a system of friends or a circle of people that will hold us accountable. And so we can reinforce that change that we are trying to see implemented. And so if we have that established from the implementation, then we can get buy-in for the change. Talk about a little bit about now that we have implemented the change, we understand that there's a change that needs to be made. We've recognized that. How do we get the buy-in from the organization or the group of people that we are trying to lead the change in? How do we get them to buy in?
Well, first of all, that last 5 minutes about change management. Hoo-wee! That was good. I'm gonna record that and play that back. Everybody else, record that and play that back. Man, that was good. Seriously, that was excellent. If you just take that part, we're good. We could drop the mic right there. But the grading buy-in goes kind of hand in hand with. I feel like I'm going to repeat myself, but it's the same thing.
Sure.
Creating buy-in from anyway is about clear communication of a vision, and allowing people to understand their part in that. The better you can do that, it's not about rah-rah speech. People think that, right? The more excitement I talk with, no. Now people do appreciate enthusiasm and your and believing that you believe in what the change is going to be, but that's not the same as rah-rah, right? There's people who can speak softly and be just as effective as somebody who speaks loud, as long as they believe that the leader himself or herself has 100% buy-in in the change. But effective communication of the vision and empowering your team to take action and understanding their part in that is the way to, in my mind, is the way you create buy-in. So,
absolutely, and I love how you said there's not just one way, Art. It's not the volume or the tone of your aggressiveness, or you could say someone's not a great leader of change because they have a passive personality. But there's more than one way to skin a cat. There's more than one way to lead that change effectively. And so I think that those of you that are listening to this really tune into that, because I think what discourages a lot of people that they don't think that they can be a leader or they can lead change is because they wouldn't model it or they wouldn't do it the way that they see someone that's on a bigger platform than them. Well, I don't talk that same way, or I don't communicate that same style. When the reality is that we all can lead different ways and still end up with the same result. And so I love that, the buy-in. I think in order to really see that change implemented and to get that buy-in, one thing that we have to really emphasize as leaders, and you hit on it earlier, is dismantling the fears from within. And what I mean is not just the fears from within your organization or within your church or within your business, but the fears from within yourself, that you don't think you're good enough, you don't think that you have what it takes, the ability to lead that change or the ability to accept that change because you've never done it before. There's an older generation that they've never used this technology before, whereas we've grown up with it. We're just, it's easy for us. It's very accessible and we're in tune with it. Well, they may have fears of using it, but we have to dismantle those fears to let them know that, hey, this is for the betterment of where we are and where we are going. So how do we kind of combat that? Not just the fear, but the complacency or the unwillingness to change. Because there's an area that you will always have to wrestle with of change that comes with resistance. In my mind, when I think about that, combating the complacency or the unwillingness to change, I thought about allowing others to influence the change. Because oftentimes people not only resist change because of fear, but they resist change because they feel like they had no voice in the change itself. And so people are more open and willing to change when they feel like they have a voice in the change. Talk about that, combating that complacency or that unwillingness to change.
So people, when it comes to unwillingness to change, people literally fear it. Like,
Yes.
understand, they are literally scared. I read a study that said that your mind literally, it registers fear in the mind. Right. However they can they look into the they do that with your brain scans or whatever with those studies. Sure. But understand that fear. So I like the acronym that fear stands for false evidence appearing real, right? People, they're fearing something that's not real, right?
Yes.
People don't, and it's funny, they don't even fear the unknown, right? They fear what we think we know of the unknown. You understand? Like, when you're scared of something, and you're scared of change or something that seems different, right? What are you actually afraid of? People say, oh, well, like some people are afraid of dogs. And like, well, I'm afraid of dogs. Why? And then, or like, let's take snakes, for example, a great example. Right. People like, I had a good sized one in my front yard just about 2 days ago. Yesterday, maybe. I was taking the trash out with kids, getting ready to go somewhere, and there's a snake on the driveway. I grew up in the Mojave Desert, okay? We had rattlesnakes and stuff all over the place. I mean, we didn't see them every day, but they were, you knew where to find them. Yeah. So I don't love them because I knew growing up that there was a 95% chance that whichever one showed up, if you found it, was highly poisonous, right? And could literally kill you. Or you would at least end up in a hospital trying to get some kind of anti-venom. So... but in Ohio, where I live, most of them are gardener snakes. They don't harm you. Well, my son, he's grown up loving all animals, everything. And so we find this big snake in our driveway the other day, and I see it, and it kind of caught me off guard, and I didn't like get super scared because I knew, I mean, at first I was like, whoa, and then I was like, wait, it's not going to be poisonous. I looked down, okay, it's a harmless snake, right? My son instantly goes, this is so cool, Dad. Don't hurt it. Don't hurt it. Everybody else is thinking, smash it with a shovel, right? Because they're afraid of this reptile that for some reason they assume is going to harm them, right? They don't actually know. They just assume that it's something that could hurt. But if they really stepped back and looked, they say, oh, it's harmless. It's actually good for killing rodents around the house, right? It's not going to hurt anybody. No poison. Doesn't bite. Good to go. But my son didn't have that sort of preemptive, early training that snakes can be harmful. Yes, he knows that there's harmful ones out there, but he's grown up loving all of them and just assuming that they only attack when when threatened. They say you can take a baby and put like a snake or something in its cage, or in like its cage, in its crib, and the baby would just want to play with it because there's no fear. You have two fears when you're born. It's the fear of falling and the fear of loud noises, right? Everything else you have made up yourself. And so when it comes to fear, I probably got a little off track, but when it comes to fear of change, it's 100% because you just assume the worst from the change that's gonna happen. And the best way to combat that, right,
Yeah.
is to step right into it. I don't know how else to tell you. Like, you can't make somebody change, first of all. You can encourage them to change, but they have to want to change. Without wanting to change, people will stay where they stay. Why do we see companies that we know are closing and people still don't get a new career, right? Why do we see industries that we know are no longer going to be here? Okay, if you're listening and you're a truck driver, I'm telling you now, go find another career because the next 10 years, they're autonomous, okay? And my father-in-law is in the field, and and I've told him, and he didn't believe me at first until I kind of further explained, showed some evidence. I'm hoping he goes in a different path. But some people just won't. They'd rather face real pain of not changing than actually just going through the change. Think of change as, for me, I like to embrace it as an adventure. That's how we do it in our family, right? This is going to be fun. Can't wait to see what's going to happen. Anyways.
That was so good. There were so many things going through my mind as you were talking, but especially as you got to that last piece about the industries and the world that we live in that's constantly changing, that if you refuse to change, the world doesn't wait on us. You will simply just no longer exist to be relevant. And I thought about, you talked about the truck drivers, that the autonomous cars, Tesla, and these companies, Amazon, and things of that nature. And I thought about Blockbuster. Blockbuster used to be the rental place to go. Go to the Blockbuster video store and rent the movie, and Netflix comes along and just wipes them completely out because I can stream instead of leaving my home and going to rent a movie and then having to take it back and worry about fees and that. I can stream it from the comfort of my home, but no one believed it. Same thing with Kodak. We're always going to be taking Polaroid pictures. No, everyone has everyone's their own personal photographer. Everyone has their own camera. And so if you refuse to change, you will literally no longer exist. I remember reading a book called Who Moved My Pulpit? And the author was talking about there are 7 words that will kill an organization or a church. And that is, we've never done it that way before. And so a lot of times people will resist. You talk about, it's not even the fear itself. That was so good, bro. It's not even the fear itself. Oh, it is the fear of what you think the fear is, of the unknown, And so I even wrote down, I talked about people will often resist what they can't understand because they can't grasp the concept, or they refuse to open up their mind to grasp the concept, whether that be with on any level of race, of culture, of society. Well, if I don't understand it, or if I didn't come from that background, or if I wasn't raised that way, that I can't understand it. And the problem is that if you have that mindset, you will literally no longer exist because you won't be able to change. Another thing I thought about in combating that complacency or that unwillingness to change is having that clear communication. Having that clear communication as a leader to the people or the organization that you are leading of, this is what the change looks like, not just in a general sense, but in details. And so there are 4 I's that you can do to clearly communicate. The first I is inform. Second I is involve. The third I is invite. And the fourth I is ignite. Inform, involve, invite, and ignite. And so you inform the people generally. You inform them what's going on. Hey, we are no longer going to be using personal desktops at work any longer. We're going to be moving to laptops, just in a general aspect. But then you can go into the details of why we're doing this. This is because it will save the company money, and you also can take your work home with you. And so it's more cost effective, it's more efficient, and it'll help us grow faster as a company, as a business. And so you inform the people, because the reality is that if you want to lead somebody in change, you can't not lead them with blindness. You have to let them know what's going on and be upfront, be honest with them, be clear, and be direct. And so after you've informed them, you don't want them to feel like they are left out and that this change does not involve them. Because we live, especially now in our social media age that we live in, John, and you know this, you have to involve people. People will not buy into what you are trying to do unless they know what is it in for me. What's in it for me and my family, not just for myself. Okay, you want me to come to church because you preach good? I'm not coming. I want to know, hey, I've got kids. Do you guys have a children's ministry? So what's in it for me? What do I get out of the deal? You want me to come work for your business? The salary is not the only thing that matters. What benefits do you offer? Do you provide health insurance? Do you provide dental insurance? Do you provide these things that are outside of the scope that'll benefit for me and my family? And so after I've informed them, after we have invited them, then after we've involved them, then we invite them. And so because they understand the expectation that we have of them in this change, people will lend their support. You invite them to support. We're inviting people to subscribe on YouTube at Unscripted Authentic Leadership. We want you to be a part of the missions, be a part of the change. Can I count on your support for this initiative to implement that change? And so we've informed, you involve, you invite, but last but not least, you ignite to let them know, hey, this is an exciting thing that we're doing. This is an exciting change. This is going to be something that benefits all of us. It's going to take us from ordinary to extraordinary. What this change will do, it'll take us as individuals to where we are to greater. And so we can excite them with our imagination, with their imaginations, by talking to them about what will happen when our initiative is a success and how this change will benefit them. So what's your thoughts on that clear communication, the inform, involve, invite, and ignite?
I think my head's about to explode, man. Oh my gosh. It's perfect. Yeah. I mean, I don't even know what to say. What can I add to that? The difference between ordinary and extraordinary is that little extra, right?
Yes.
And people don't, one thing everybody needs to remember is people don't care what you know until they know that you care, which is exactly what you were talking about. By do you have this? Do you have that? What's in it for me? That kind of thing. Not necessarily what's in it for me, but if I go the extra mile, is it for us, right? And so that was really good. I don't yeah, like I say, clarity of vision, guys. Clarity of vision. Empower your team. Show them that you love them. Be the best example you can be. And and make sure they're included in part of the vision. Don't micromanage them. Let them have a part of it. It doesn't have to be perfect, right? Yes. It does not have to be perfect. And just because it's not your way doesn't mean it's not a good way. So there's a lot of small things that these people can just let go. And so, anyways, that was perfect. I don't want to change what you just said. No,
absolutely, bro. Absolutely, bro. And so we want the audience to know, those of you that will tune in, that will watch this back and listen to this, leading change is possible. 2020 is still your year, and it's still possible to lead change in whatever area and context you are leading in. And I want to leave you with this quote by Glenn Lopez. He says, leaders see what others don't, do what others won't, and keep pushing when prudence says quit. Leaders see what others don't, do what others won't, and they keep pushing when prudence says quit. You have what it takes within you to lead that change. Man, I've enjoyed this conversation on leading change, and I know someone will be definitely encouraged by this conversation on leading change, and it will help you succeed and be successful in your path and your success of being that leader that God has created you to be. Listen, we want you all to subscribe. We thank you for your support. We want you to continue to support our podcast and to subscribe on YouTube under Unscripted Authentic Leadership. That is Unscripted Authentic Leadership on YouTube. You can subscribe to our channel, Unscripted Authentic Leadership. And also follow us, like us on Facebook, share, like, and comment on our Facebook page, Unscripted Authentic Leadership. Also, you can follow us on Instagram at our page handle at Unscripted Leadership. Follow John at John LeBron 3. That is the number 3. And then myself at Lafayette B. Lane. And those that you saying, I don't have time to watch the podcast, that's fine. That's perfectly fine, because you can stream our podcast on all major podcast platforms that you can find, whether it's Apple, Spotify, Google Podcast, Stitcher, Buzzsprout. You can find us on all major podcast streaming platforms. And then also, in order to lead change, we are all about education, educating yourself and filling yourself with information so you have that mind, that your mind stays sharp. We want to give you the read of the week this week, 7 Habits of Highly Effective People by Stephen R. Covey. This book is very encouraging. I read this a while back, and it causes you to have a self-reflection that it does not take a lot to be highly effective. Just 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. It's not a hard read, and I guarantee you will enjoy this book, that you can do a self-assessment of the habits that you go throughout your daily life and check on yourself, do a self-evaluation of, maybe these are some habits I need to change. I can start doing some things differently in order to be effective and be that leader that God has called me to be. Listen, this has been another week of Unscripted Authentic Leadership. Co-host John LeBron, myself, we have enjoyed, and once again, we appreciate all of your support. Please continue to like, comment, share, and subscribe to our channel, to all our social media platforms. Remember, it is possible to lead change. Even in the midst of a pandemic and a crazy year, it's still your year. Until next week, we'll see you next time. God bless you.